Settle in, friends, because tonight we're diving deep into one of gaming's most intricate mysteries. Five Nights at Freddy's didn't just terrify millions of players with its simple, yet effective horror. It created an entire universe of hidden secrets, cryptic messages, and Easter eggs that have kept the community theorizing for nearly a decade. What started as a simple indie horror game about surviving 5 nights in a haunted pizzeria became something far more complex. A puzzle box filled with clues about murdered children, possessed animatronics, and a story that spans generations. Scott Cawthon, the creator of this phenomenon, understood something fundamental about horror and storytelling. The scariest things are often what we don't see, what we have to piece together ourselves from fragments and whispers. And so he filled his games with Easter eggs, rare screens that flash for seconds, posters that change when you're not looking, sounds that play at random, and mini-games that reveal pieces of a much larger tragedy. Tonight, we're going to examine every Easter egg from the original trilogy, the first 3 games that started it all. We'll look at what they mean, how they connect, and what they tell us about the dark history of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Some of these secrets you might know. Others are so rare that even dedicated players have never seen them. But together they paint a picture of one of gaming's most elaborate mysteries. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin our journey into the hidden world of 5 Nights at Freddy's. The first game opens simply enough. You're Mike Schmidt, a night security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and your job is to survive from midnight to 6 AM while 4 animatronic characters roam the building. But from the very first night, if you're curious enough, you'll discover that this place holds secrets. The Celebrate poster hangs on the left wall of your office, showing Freddy Fazbear in all his glory. It's a cheerful image, the kind you'd see at any children's restaurant. But if you click on Freddy's nose, you hear something unexpected, a honk like a clown's nose or a bicycle horn. It's a small detail, almost silly, but it became a tradition. Every game in the series would hide this same Easter egg somewhere. A little moment of levity in games filled with dread. But this honk is more than just a joke. It's Scott's way of telling players to look closer, to interact with the environment, to search for things that aren't immediately obvious. Because if you're willing to click on a poster just to see what happens, you might discover the much darker secrets hidden throughout the game. As you play through the nights, you might notice something strange happening. Every second there's a tiny chance, 1 in 1,000, that your screen will flash with an image or text. These are the hallucinations, and they're some of the most unsettling elements in the game. The phrase "it's me" appears in bold letters, sometimes accompanied by images of the animatronics with hollow eyes and tiny white pupils staring directly at you. Freddy appears with human eyes in his sockets, a disturbing reminder that something human is trapped inside that metal shell. Bonnie stares with black eyes and misaligned pupils, his gaze following you even through the camera feed. These aren't just jump scares, they're glimpses into the tortured consciousness of the spirits inhabiting these machines. The phrase "it's me" has become one of the most analysed pieces of FNAF lore. Who is speaking? What are they trying to say? The most common interpretation is that it's a plea for recognition. Imagine being a child, murdered and stuffed into an animatronic suit, your consciousness trapped in a body that doesn't respond the way you want it to. You see someone, maybe a security guard, maybe someone who knew you when you were alive, and you desperately want them to understand. It's me. I'm still here. I'm still human underneath this metal and fur. Others believe it's specifically Golden Freddy speaking, since the phrase appears most prominently during his appearances. Golden Freddy, that mysterious fifth animatronic who doesn't follow the same rules as the others, might be trying to communicate something specific. Perhaps he's the crying child from FNAF 4, trying to tell his brother that he's still there, still aware, still suffering. Or perhaps it's a confession. It was me who caused the bite. It was me you should have saved. It was me all along. The hallucinations can strike at any time, even if the power runs out and you're sitting in darkness waiting for Freddy's music box to wind down. They're not tied to any specific trigger beyond random chance, which makes them feel more like intrusions from another reality. Moments when the veil between the physical and spiritual world grows thin. And then there's Golden Freddy himself. His appearance is tied to one of the rarest Easter eggs in the game, so rare that it has a 1 in 32,768 chance of occurring. If you're checking the West Hall corner camera, you might see the Celebrate poster replaced with a close-up of Golden Freddy's face. A slumped, lifeless stare that seems to look through the camera and directly into your soul. When this poster appears, you'll hear a child's laugh, high and eerie, echoing through your headphones. If you don't immediately flip up your monitor, Golden Freddy will appear in your office. Not walking in through the door like the others, not crawling through the vents. He simply materializes, slumped on the floor in front of your desk, staring at you with those empty black eyes. And if you look at him for too long, the game doesn't just give you a jump scare, it crashes. The entire program shuts down, as if Golden Freddy's presence is too much for the game itself to handle. This crash is significant. When the other animatronics kill you, you see a game over screen showing your character's eyes, staring out from inside a Freddy Fazbear suit. The implication is clear. You've been stuffed into a costume, your body crammed into a space filled with metal endoskeleton parts and wiring, left to die slowly or perhaps to join the other spirits haunting this place. But Golden Freddy doesn't stuff you into a suit. He simply ends you, crashes your existence, as if his power operates on a different level than the physical animatronics. This has led many to theorize that Golden Freddy isn't really there at all. He's a hallucination, an apparition. Yeah, a ghost that exists in the minds of those who work at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Phone Guy never mentions him in any of his calls, which is strange considering he warns you about every other animatronic. It's as if Golden Freddy exists outside the normal rules of the restaurant, a spirit so powerful or so tortured that he can manifest directly into your perception without needing a physical form. But Golden Freddy isn't the only animatronic behaving strangely. If you're watching Freddy on the show stage camera and he's alone, which happens often since he's usually the last to leave, there's a 1 in 100 chance that something disturbing will happen. His eyes will go completely black except for tiny white pinprick pupils, and he'll stare directly into the camera with an intensity that suggests awareness, intelligence, just something more than simple programming. This Easter egg can stack with others, meaning you might see multiple animatronics with these hollow eyes at the same time if you're unlucky enough. It's a reminder that these aren't just malfunctioning robots. There's something inside them, something that knows you're watching, something that's watching you back. Foxy has his own peculiar behaviour. His out-of-order sign at Pirate Cove will occasionally change to display those same words, "It's me," in crude lettering. This happens with a 1% chance every time you open the monitor after Foxy has left his stage. The sign changes and changes back, as if reality itself is glitching, as if the spirits are trying to communicate through whatever means they can find. Why would Foxy's sign change? If we believe that Golden Freddy is behind the "It's me" messages, perhaps he's manipulating the environment, using whatever tools are available to send his message. Or perhaps the entire restaurant is haunted, saturated with so much death and suffering that the walls themselves have absorbed the trauma, allowing messages to appear on signs and posters without any physical cause. The posters throughout the restaurant are particularly prone to these reality glitches. In the West Hall corner there's a "Let's Party" poster showing Freddy in a cheerful pose, but occasionally, with that same 1 in 100 chance, the poster changes to something far more disturbing. Freddy is in the same position, but now his head is split open, his upper jaw separated from his lower, an eyeball missing, the endoskeleton nowhere to be seen. It's as if we're seeing behind the mask, seeing the animatronic in a state of disrepair, or perhaps seeing something that happened to him, some moment of violence or malfunction that left him damaged. Is this poster showing a real event? Did Freddy actually tear himself apart at some point? Or is this another hallucination, Mike Schmidt's mind playing tricks on him as the stress of the job and the supernatural presence in the building begin to take their toll? The answer might lie in The Silver Eyes, the novel that accompanies the games, where the animatronics' images in posters and paintings actually move and change, suggesting that the haunting extends beyond the physical suits into every representation of these characters, and even more rarely, with a 1 in 32,768 chance, the Let's Party poster can be replaced with a close-up of Golden Freddy's face. This is the poster that triggers his appearance, the one that makes him materialize in your office. The fact that it can replace Freddy's poster is interesting. Are Freddy and Golden Freddy connected somehow? Are they the same character in different forms, or are they separate entities with some shared history? The East Hall has its own poster mysteries. 3 posters hang there showing Chica, Freddy and Bonnie in their standard promotional poses. But sometimes, all 3 posters change simultaneously to show the same image, a crude drawing of a crying child with hollow eyes and small black pupils. The art style is simple, almost childlike, which makes it even more disturbing. These aren't professional posters. They're drawings, the kind a child might make, and they've somehow replaced the official restaurant artwork. Who is this crying child? The design is similar to the child we see in FNAF 2's Take Cake to the Children minigame, the first victim, the one who would become the puppet. But it could also represent all of the murdered children, their spirits crying out through whatever means they can find. The fact that the drawings replace the animatronic posters is significant. It's as if the game is telling us that these characters and these children are one and the same, that you can't separate the animatronics from the victims trapped inside them. These same posters can also be replaced with graffiti, the words "It's me" scrawled twice where the posters were, and once on the opposite wall. It's as if someone took a marker or spray paint and wrote these words in desperation, trying to communicate something vital. The graffiti appears and disappears just like the posters, suggesting it's not physically there but rather a manifestation of the haunting, a message from beyond that only appears when conditions are right. But perhaps the most important Easter eggs in the first game are the newspapers. In the East Hall corner, there's a rules and safety poster that occasionally, with that familiar 1% chance, gets replaced by one of 4 newspaper clippings. These newspapers tell the story of what happened at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the tragedy that set everything in motion. The first newspaper is dated June 26th, though the year is cut off. Yes, it reports that 2 children were lured into a back room by someone wearing a company mascot suit. The suspect was caught on camera and has been charged, but the children were never found. The article ends ominously, with people assuming the worst. This is the Missing Children Incident, the MCI, the event that everything else stems from. A man dressed as one of the animatronics, we'll later learn it was Spring Bonnie, William Afton's preferred disguise, lured children away from their families and murdered them. The bodies were never recovered because, as we'll discover, they were hidden inside the animatronic suits, where they would remain, slowly possessing the characters that had been used to lure them to their deaths. The second newspaper is shorter but no less disturbing. It mentions complaints about the animatronic's odour, as with the health department threatening to close the restaurant. Blood and mucus have been seen leaking from the animatronic's masks. This is the smell of death, of bodies decomposing inside metal shells, of a crime that went undetected for far too long. The fact that the restaurant stayed open despite these complaints shows the negligence, or perhaps the complicity, of Fazbear Entertainment. The third newspaper updates the story. 5 children are now linked to the incident. The suspect has been charged, though we know from later games that he was never convicted. The bodies were never found, so there was no proof of murder. The restaurant is struggling to convince families to return, which is perhaps the understatement of the century. Who would bring their children back to a place where 5 kids disappeared and were presumably murdered? The newspaper's quote is telling. It's a tragedy. Not it's horrific or it's unforgivable or we're devastated. Just it's a tragedy, as if they're describing a natural disaster rather than a mass murder that occurred on their property due to their negligence. This is Fazbear Entertainment in a nutshell. Minimizing, deflecting, trying to maintain their brand, even as children's blood literally leaks from their animatronics. The fourth newspaper announces the closure. After years of struggling, the restaurant is finally shutting down. They couldn't find a buyer, which isn't surprising given the history. And the final message from the CEO is almost insulting in its tone deafness. These characters will live on in the hearts of children. Yes, they'll live on because they're possessed by the spirits of murdered children, trapped in an endless cycle of anger and confusion. These newspapers connect to the cassette tapes we hear in FNAF 3, the training tapes that mention an employee using a mascot suit in the back rooms. They paint a picture of a company that prioritized profit over safety, that ignored warning signs, that allowed a murderer to use their restaurant as a hunting ground. And when the inevitable happened, they tried to cover it up, to minimize the damage, to keep the doors open as long as possible. The backstage room holds its own mysteries. When Bonnie is in this room, there's a 1% chance that he'll turn to face the camera with the same hollow eyes and white pinprick pupils. But even when Bonnie isn't there, the room itself can become unsettling. The spare animatronic heads and parts that litter the shelves will all turn to face the camera simultaneously, their empty eye sockets staring directly at you. This is particularly strange because most of these aren't even complete animatronics. They're just masks, hollow shells with no endoskeleton, no power saw, no reason to move. And yet they turn, they watch, they judge. This could be evidence that Golden Freddy is manipulating them with some kind of psychic ability, or it could suggest that Mike Schmidt is losing his mind, seeing movement where there is none, feeling watched by inanimate objects. But there's a third possibility that's even more disturbing. What if the entire restaurant is haunted? Not just the animatronics that had bodies stuffed into them, but the building itself. is saturated with so much death and trauma that it's become a kind of spiritual battery, storing and amplifying the supernatural energy. In this interpretation, the masks turn because the walls remember, because the very air in this place is thick with the echoes of what happened here. Foxy has his own audio Easter egg. The sound he makes when you slam the door in his face, that distinctive banging, has a 2% chance of playing every 10 seconds, even when Foxy is still in Pirate Cove. This means something else could be making that sound, something else could be knocking on your door. Scott Cawthon himself addressed this in a cryptic way, saying, "Who's to say? Could be anything. Could be anything. Could be another animatronic. Could be William Afton trapped in the safe room trying to get out. Could be the spirits of the children, knocking from the other side trying to communicate. Or could be nothing at all, just a random sound in a building full of mechanical equipment and supernatural phenomena. The ambiguity is intentional, another mystery layered on top of mysteries. Sometimes you'll hear circus music playing faintly in the background. It has a 1 in 30 chance of occurring, and it's both whimsical and deeply unsettling. Is this music from the restaurant's sound system, malfunctioning and playing at random? Is it a hallucination, Mike's mind filling the silence with sounds from his past? Or is it a hint at something else? Something that wouldn't be revealed until Sister Location introduced us to Circus Baby's Pizza World. One of the posters in the East Hall even says Fun Time, which in retrospect seems like an impossible coincidence. Could Mike Schmidt be hallucinating about circus babies, about the Fun Time animatronics, about events that happened in his past? If Mike is Michael Afton, as many theories suggest, then he would have memories of his sister's death at Circus Baby's Pizza World, memories that might surface as circus music and fun time references during his night shifts at Freddy's. Foxy also hums to himself when he's in Pirate Cove. With a 1 in 30 chance every 4 seconds, you'll hear him singing a little tune, a pirate shanty perhaps, or just a melody programmed into his system. This is interesting because it suggests personality, individuality. Foxy isn't just a mindless killing machine. He's a character with quirks, with behaviours that go beyond his base programming. Is this humming something that came from Fritz, the child possessing Foxy? Or is it part of Foxy's original programming, something he did during performances? The other animatronics are in a band, playing instruments and singing, so it makes sense that Foxy would have some musical element to his character, even if he's just a pirate who tells stories and entertains children with his hook and eye patch. After you die and see the game over screen, your eyes staring out from inside Freddy's mask, the implication clear that you've been stuffed into a suit. There's a 1 in 10,000 chance that something else will happen. Instead of returning to the main menu, you'll see Golden Freddy's jump scare again. You're already dead, already stuffed into a suit, and yet Golden Freddy attacks you again, crashes the game again, as if to emphasize that death is not the end, that there are worse things than dying. This Easter egg is particularly cruel. You've already lost, already been killed, and now you're being killed again. It's as if Golden Freddy is saying that even in death, even after you've joined the other spirits trapped in this place, you're still not safe from him. Or perhaps it's showing that Golden Freddy exists outside the normal rules, that he can attack spirits as well as living people, that his power extends beyond the physical world into whatever comes after. The custom night has its own Easter eggs. If you set the animatronic's AI levels to 1987, spelling out 1987, Golden Freddy's jump scare will immediately trigger. This was added in version 1.13 as a response to rumours about a secret ending, and it's one of the few direct connections between the bite of 87 and the bite of 83. The game is telling us that these two events are related somehow, that Golden Freddy, or Fredbear, his predecessor, is connected to both incidents. Does this mean Golden Freddy caused the bite of 87? Probably not. We know from FNAF 2 that the bite likely happened at that location, and Golden Freddy wasn't an active animatronic there. He appears in the game, but only as a hallucination or apparition, not as a functioning character that the restaurant was using. The bite of 87 was probably caused by one of the toy animatronics, most likely Mangle based on her behaviour, and the fact that she's the only one who could reach an adult's frontal lobe. But the connection is still there. Golden Freddy is tied to the concept of the bite, to the idea of animatronics attacking people, to the trauma that defines this entire franchise. Yeah, whether he caused it or not, he represents it, embodies it, serves as a reminder that these machines are dangerous, that they've hurt people before and will hurt people again. When you're entering or returning to the title screen, there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that you'll see Bonnie's face staring at you for a few seconds. His eyes are hollow, just like in the hallucinations, and tiny white pupils appear for half a second before the image fades. This isn't just a creepy image, it's showing us that Bonnie is possessed, that there's something inside him looking out, something aware and watching. For most of the image, Bonnie looks like he could just be a mask, a prop, an inanimate object. But then those pupils appear, and suddenly you realise there's consciousness there, intelligence, something that's looking at you and seeing you. It's a brief moment, easy to miss, but it confirms what we've suspected all along. These animatronics aren't empty, they're occupied, inhabited, possessed by the spirits of children who died horrible deaths. Even the opening newspaper, the Help Wanted ad that starts the game, has hidden messages. Among the blurred text are complete sentences, jokes from Scott about how this probably isn't the best summer job, how you'd be better off as a cashier or warehouse worker, jobs where you probably won't be killed. He says the ad has nothing to do with anything relevant to the game, but then he refers to it as a summer job, which creates an interesting contradiction. The game takes place in November according to your paycheck, but Phone Guy and the media refer to it as a summer job. This could mean the ads and phone calls are old, just recorded months earlier, or it could be another timeline inconsistency, another piece of the puzzle that doesn't quite fit. These contradictions are part of what makes FNAF's lore so complex and debated. Scott leaves clues that sometimes contradict each other, forcing us to theorise and debate about what's really happening. The second game expands on everything the first game established. The Easter eggs become more complex, the lore deeper, the mysteries more intricate, and it all starts with that same honking nose. The Celebrate poster returns in your office, and Freddy's nose still honks when you click it. It's a small moment of continuity, a reminder that despite all the new animatronics and the new location, some things remain the same. But FNAF 2 introduces something new, JJ, the recoloured version of Balloon Boy who appears under your desk. With a 1 in 1,000 chance every time you lower the monitor she'll materialise there, sitting quietly, doing nothing. She doesn't attack you, doesn't drain your flashlight like her counterpart, doesn't affect the game in any way. She's just there, watching, existing in a space where she shouldn't be. JJ's presence is strange because she's not supposed to be in this game at all. She's not one of the toy animatronics, not one of the withered animatronics, not mentioned by Phone Guy or seen anywhere else in the restaurant. She's an anomaly, a glitch, something that exists outside the normal rules. Is she a hallucination? A ghost? Another spirit trapped in this place. We don't know, and the game never explains her. Shadow Bonnie is even more mysterious. Then, with a 1 in 16,384 chance, a dark silhouette of Toy Bonnie will appear in your office. He's completely black except for his eyes and teeth, which glow white, and if you look at him for more than 4 seconds, the game crashes. Just like Golden Freddy, Shadow Bonnie has the power to end the game itself, to break through the fourth wall and affect the program running on your computer. To survive this encounter, you have to shine your flashlight at him, which makes him disappear. But what is Shadow Bonnie? He appears again in FNAF 3 in a minigame alongside Fredbear, suggesting he's connected to the original restaurant, to the spring lock suits, to the very beginning of this story. His character model is labelled RWQFSFASXC, a string of letters that seems random but might be a cipher or code. In the Fazbear Fright story, Blackbird, Shadow Bonnie attaches himself to a boy and grows stronger as the boy becomes more fearful. This suggests he's an agony creature, something formed from intense negative emotions, trauma given form and consciousness. If Shadow Bonnie was created during the missing children incident, formed from the terror and pain of William Afton's victims, it would explain why he appears as a Spring Bonnie silhouette. He's the shadow cast by that terrible act, the darkness that William left behind. The paper plate dolls return from the first game, but now they're more active. 3 dolls hang on the wall in Party Room 4, but there's a 1% chance that one of them will activate during the night, moving from the party room to your office wall. It's a small detail, easy to miss, but it shows that even the decorations in this place aren't safe, aren't normal, aren't following the rules of reality. How does a paper plate doll move on its own? It has no endoskeleton, no motors, no power source. It's literally just paper and streamers, and yet it moves. It travels through the building. It appears in your office with a smile on its face. Is it possessed? Is the entire restaurant so saturated with supernatural energy that even inanimate objects can move? Or is this another hallucination, the night guard's mind playing tricks as the stress and fear build night after night? Shadow. Freddy appears in the parts and service room, but only when Withered Freddy and Withered Foxy aren't there. He's a dark purple version of Golden Freddy, missing an ear and sitting in the same slumped pose. Unlike Shadow Bonnie, he doesn't crash the game or attack you. He just sits there, existing, watching. With a 10% chance of appearing every time you open the monitor, he's actually one of the more common Easter eggs, though many players never notice him. Shadow Freddy is particularly interesting because he appears again in FNAF 3's minigames, where he seems to be guiding the animatronics toward William Afton. He's leading them to their destruction, to the moment when William will dismantle them and release their spirits. Is Shadow Freddy helping the children, or is he serving some other purpose? Is he even aware of what he's doing, or is he just another ghost, another echo of trauma, moving through the building without understanding why? Endo-02, the bear endoskeleton, lurks in the prize corner after the puppet leaves. With a 10% chance of appearing, he's always nearby, always watching. The fact that a skinless endoskeleton can move around the restaurant means either Fazbear Entertainment's programming is catastrophically flawed, or this endoskeleton is possessed by something. Could this be Golden Freddy's endoskeleton? In FNAF 1, Golden Freddy appears to be missing his endoskeleton, which is why he slumps on the floor rather than standing. If his endoskeleton was removed at some point, perhaps during the events of FNAF 2, it would explain why he doesn't have one in the first game. And if that endoskeleton was possessed, if it contained part of the spirit that inhabits Golden Freddy, it would explain why Endo-02 can move on its own. The puppet has its own visual Easter eggs. After you let it out of its box, and there's a 2% chance that transparent images will flash on your screen when you shine your flashlight in a room the puppet occupies. These images are disturbing. Faces, masks, glimpses of something that shouldn't be there. They suggest that the puppet is more ghost than animatronic, that it exists partially in another realm, that its presence causes reality to glitch and waver. This makes sense given what we know about the puppet's origin. Charlotte Emily, Henry's daughter, was the first victim. She died outside the restaurant, and her spirit merged with the puppet in a way that seems different from the other possessions. The other children had their bodies stuffed into suits, their flesh binding their spirits to the metal. But Charlotte's spirit attached to the puppet without that physical connection, suggesting a different kind of haunting, one based more on proximity and emotion than on physical remains. The rare screens return in FNAF 2 showing withered Freddy, withered Foxy and Toy Bonnie with those same hollow eyes. These screens appear with a 1 in 1,000 chance after the warning screen or game over screen, and they're accompanied by unsettling audio. They don't add much to the lore, but they maintain the atmosphere, reminding us that these animatronics are watching, waiting, aware. But the real lore of FNAF 2 comes from the minigames. These are the first minigames in the series, and they introduce us to Purple Guy, to the missing children incident, to the events that set everything in motion. Each minigame tells a different part of the story, and they're accessed by dying, with a 10% chance of getting one after each death. Save Them shows Freddy and the puppet moving through what appears to be the FNAF 2 location. The words "Save Them" spell out in the background, but you can't save them. The children are already dead, already scattered throughout the building, and Purple Guy is there, running through the rooms, his presence a reminder that the killer is still active, still hunting. If you're lucky, or unlucky enough, Purple Guy will run out of the right doorway with a 1% chance, charging at you and ending the minigame with the words "You can't" on the screen. You can't save them, you can't stop him, you can't change what's already happened. It's a message of futility, of helplessness, of being too late to prevent the tragedy. Take Cake to the Children shows Freddy serving cake to children, trying to keep them from crying. But there's a child outside, alone in the rain, and Freddy can't reach her. Purple Guy approaches, and the child stops crying for a moment. Perhaps she recognizes him. Perhaps she knows him as her father's business partner. And then she's dead. The minigame ends with the puppet's jump scare, showing us that this child, this first victim, became the puppet. This is Charlotte Emily's death, the moment that started everything. Before this, William Afton was just a businessman, a father, a co-owner of a restaurant chain. But something happened, perhaps his own son's death in the bite of 83, perhaps something else that turned him into a killer. And Charlotte was his first victim, the beginning of a murder spree that would claim at least 11 children across multiple locations. Give gifts, give life is perhaps the most important minigame in understanding how the possession works. The puppet moves through a room, placing masks on 4 children: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Then it gives each of them a gift. The children's eyes light up, and they become the animatronics, their spirits bound to the metal shells. This minigame suggests that the puppet is responsible for the possessions, that it's the one who gave the children life by binding their spirits to the animatronics. Whether this was intentional or instinctive, whether the puppet understood what it was doing or was simply trying to help in the only way it could, we don't know. But the result is clear. The children didn't just possess the animatronics by accident. They were placed there, given a new form, transformed from victims into something else. The gifts the puppet gives are mysterious. We see the phrase "give gifts, give life" as two separate actions, suggesting that the gifts and the life are different things. The puppet gives them masks, gives them new bodies, but it also gives them something else. Perhaps consciousness, perhaps purpose, perhaps the ability to remain in this world rather than moving on to whatever comes next. Foxy Go 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 shows Foxy running out to entertain children, doing his pirate routine. He does this twice successfully, the children cheering and happy. But the third time, Purple Guy is there, and the children are dead, slumped on the floor, their bodies scattered. The minigame ends with Withered Foxy's jump scare, connecting this event to the animatronic we see in FNAF 2. This is the missing children incident at the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the location that came before FNAF 2. 5 children were lured away and murdered, their bodies hidden in the animatronic suits. This is why the suits smell, why blood and mucus leak from them, why the health department keeps threatening to shut the place down. The evidence of murder is literally dripping from the animatronics, but somehow the restaurant stayed open, somehow they kept serving pizza and entertaining children while corpses rotted inside their mascots. The newspapers in FNAF 2 contain the same hidden messages as the first game, Scott's jokes about summer jobs and career choices, but they also contain the same information about the missing children incident, the same dates and details, confirming that these events are connected across both games, that the story is consistent even as the locations and characters change. FNAF 3 takes place 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed, in a horror attraction called Fazbear's Fright. The company is gone, the restaurants are closed, but the legacy remains, and with it, the Easter eggs continue, stranger and more disturbing than ever. The paper plate dolls return, but now all 3 of them can appear in your office. Paper Freddy and Paper Bonnie each have a 1 in 10,000 chance of appearing every time you use the maintenance panel or monitor. They're in perfect condition despite being decades old, despite sitting in an abandoned restaurant for years. How is this possible? If we believe that Michael Afton is the protagonist of the first 3 games, then these paper dolls might be hallucinations, memories from his time working at the restaurant in the 1980s. Or perhaps the entire building is haunted, the paper dolls preserved by the same supernatural energy that keeps the animatronics moving, that allows spirits to manifest and reality to glitch. Shadow Freddy returns, but he looks different now. With a 1 in 10,000 chance of appearing in the office, he's no longer purple but ash grey, his eyes and teeth no longer glowing. He looks faded, diminished, as if 30 years have drained him of whatever power he once had. Or perhaps this is showing us that Shadow Freddy was never really there, that he's always been more hallucination than entity, more memory than ghost. But Shadow Freddy also appears in the Follow Me minigames, and there he's still dark purple, still active, still leading the animatronics to their fate. This creates a timeline problem. When do these minigames take place? Are they happening during FNAF 3, or are they flashbacks to an earlier time? The answer affects how we understand Shadow Freddy's nature and purpose. The drawings on the cameras can change, just like the posters in the previous games. A drawing of Mr. Cupcake has a 1 in 100 chance of appearing on Cam 04, replacing a drawing of Toy Bonnie. Even more rarely, with a 1 in 10,000 chance, a golden Mr. Cupcake can appear. These moving pictures are hard to explain. Are they hallucinations, or is the building itself haunted, saturated with so much supernatural energy that even drawings can change? Mr. Cupcake himself appears on your desk with a 1 in 10,000 chance when you access the maintenance panel. He's the only animatronic from the original games who seems to have survived intact. In the Follow Me minigames, when all 4 main animatronics are destroyed, Mr. Cupcake remains, sitting there undamaged. Does this mean he's still around 30 years later? Does this mean the spirits of the children somehow transferred into him after their original bodies were destroyed? It's a strange theory, but it would explain how Mr. Cupcake can appear in your office, how he can move on his own in later games, how he seems to have a consciousness that a simple prop shouldn't possess. If the children's spirits needed somewhere to go after William destroyed their animatronic bodies, Mr. Cupcake might have been the only option available. The posters on Cam 02 and Cam 10 can be replaced with posters of Spring Bonnie, with a 1 in 10,000 chance. These posters are in the same art style as the ones they replace, suggesting they all come from the same era, the same restaurant, probably the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza from 1983. The fact that Spring Bonnie posters appear and disappear randomly could be tied to Springtrap, to William Afton's presence in the building, to the fact that the killer has returned in the same suit he used to lure children to their deaths. The rare screens in FNAF 3 show Springtrap in various states, sometimes just his face, sometimes him peeling his mask off in a disturbing echo of Freddy's Let's Party poster from the first game. These screens appear with a 1 in 1,000 chance after the warning screen, Game Over screen, or at the beginning of any night. They show us that there's a man inside the suit, that William Afton is still there, still aware, still trapped in the spring lock suit that killed him decades ago. The images of Springtrap removing his mask are particularly disturbing because they show the decay, the rot, the fact that William's body has been inside this suit for years. His corpse is mummified, preserved by the suit and by whatever supernatural force keeps him animated. He's neither alive nor dead, existing in some terrible in-between state, unable to die but unable to truly live. When you brighten the It Burns newspaper that appears after the fire, you can see Springtrap in the background of the Freddy plush image. He survived the fire, escaped the building, and would go on to appear in Pizzeria Simulator as Scraptrap. The fire that was supposed to end everything, that was supposed to free the spirits and destroy the last remnants of Fazbear Entertainment's dark history, failed. William Afton survived, because he always survives, because he always comes back. The newspapers in FNAF 3 contain more hidden messages, this time trivia from Scott about the development of the game. He talks about how he only used the names Freddy, Bonnie, Sheikah and Foxy as placeholders, but grew to like them, how he modelled Foxy during a car ride. These messages are less about lore and more about breaking the fourth wall, reminding us that these games were created by a person, that there's a human element behind all the horror and mystery. But the most important Easter eggs in FNAF 3 are the mini-games. Follow Me shows Shadow Freddy leading the 4 main animatronics to a back room, where William Afton dismantles them one by one. The spirits are released, and they corner William, who panics and climbs into the Spring Bonnie suit. The spring locks fail, and William dies, or seems to die, trapped in the suit that will become his prison for the next 30 years. These mini-games are crucial to understanding the timeline. When do they take place? The common theory is that they happen after FNAF 1, that William returned to the closed restaurant to harvest the remnant from the animatronics for his funtime creations. But the sprites show the withered animatronics from FNAF 2, and the map resembles FNAF 1's layout, creating confusion about when and where this is happening. The other mini-games in FNAF 3 are accessed through hidden methods: double-clicking posters, pressing arcade buttons in specific patterns, clicking cupcakes, inputting codes into wall tiles. Each mini-game reveals a piece of the larger story, showing us different moments in the history of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. BB's Air Adventure, Mangle's Quest, Chica's Party, Stage 01, and the Glitch minigame all lead to Happiest Day, the culmination of everything. In this minigame, you control the puppet as you approach a crying child wearing a golden Freddy mask. Other children appear, each wearing a mask of one of the main animatronics, and they give the crying child a birthday cake. This is the good ending, the moment when the spirits are finally freed. The crying child is most likely the Bite of 83 victim, the child who died at Fredbear's family diner and whose death may have triggered William Afton's descent into madness. By giving this child the birthday party he never got, by healing the original wound, the puppet and the other spirits are able to move on, to find peace, to escape the cycle of violence and revenge that has trapped them for so long. But this ending only happens if you complete all the mini-games, if you find all the secrets, if you do everything right. Otherwise, the spirits remain trapped, the animatronics stay possessed, and the cycle continues. It's a message about the importance of remembering, of acknowledging what happened, of giving the victims the recognition and peace they deserve. The Easter eggs across these three games tell a story that's deeper and more complex than what's presented on the surface. They show us that Scott Cawthon was building something intricate from the very beginning, that every rare screen and hidden message and changing poster was part of a larger narrative about tragedy, possession, and the consequences of corporate negligence. The hallucinations in FNAF 1 aren't just random scares, they're the spirits trying to communicate, trying to make someone understand what happened to them. The "It's me" messages are pleas for recognition from children who were forgotten, whose murders were covered up, whose bodies were hidden inside mascot suits and left to rot. The newspapers tell us about the missing children incident, about how 5 children disappeared and were never found, about how the restaurant tried to stay open despite blood leaking from the animatronics. They show us a company that valued profit over safety, that ignored warning signs, that allowed a killer to use their restaurant as a hunting ground. The mini-games in FNAF 2 show us the murders themselves, the moment when Purple Guy lured children away and killed them, the moment when the puppet gave them new life by binding their spirits to the animatronics. They show us Charlotte Emily's death, the first victim, the one who would become the puppet and spend the rest of her existence trying to help the other children, trying to give them the peace she never found. The mini-games in FNAF 3 show us the end, or what should have been the end. William Afton returns to destroy the animatronics, to harvest their remnant or simply to eliminate the evidence of his crimes, but the spirits are released and they corner him, and he dies in the Spring Bonnie suit. 30 years later, he's found and brought to Fazbear's Fright, where he'll burn in a fire that he somehow survives. The Easter eggs also show us the limitations of what we can know. Some of them are clearly meaningful. The newspapers, the mini-games, the connections between characters and events. But others are ambiguous, open to interpretation, possibly meaningless. The circus music, the knocking sounds, the paper plate dolls moving on their own. Are these lore relevant, or are they just Scott adding atmosphere and mystery? This ambiguity is part of what makes FNAF so compelling. We can't know everything for certain. We have to theorise, debate, piece together evidence from multiple sources. The Easter eggs give us clues, but they don't give us answers. They show us fragments of a larger picture, but we have to figure out how those fragments fit together. And that's perhaps the most important thing to understand about these Easter eggs. They're not just secrets to be found. They're pieces of a story that Scott Cawthon has been telling across multiple games, books and other media. Each Easter egg adds something to our understanding, whether it's a concrete fact like a date or location, or something more abstract like the emotional state of the spirits, the nature of the haunting, the rules that govern this universe. The rare screens showing animatronics with hollow eyes tell us that these characters are possessed, that there's something inside them looking out. The changing posters tell us that the haunting extends beyond the physical animatronics into the environment itself, that the entire restaurant is saturated with supernatural energy. The hallucinations tell us that the spirits are trying to communicate, that they want to be seen, to be recognised, to be remembered. Golden Freddy's ability to crash the game tells us that he's different from the others, that he operates on a different level, that his power extends beyond the game world into the program itself. Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy tell us that there are entities in this universe that aren't simply possessed animatronics, that agony and trauma can create new forms of consciousness, new beings that exist in the shadows. The puppet's transparent images tell us that it's more ghost than machine, that Charlotte Emily's possession is different from the others, that she exists partially in another realm. The minigames tell us the history, who died, when they died, how they died, and what happened to their spirits afterward. But the Easter eggs also tell us what we don't know, what remains mysterious. We don't know exactly when the Follow Me minigames take place. We don't know if Golden Freddy is Fredbear or a separate character. We don't know if the hallucinations are real supernatural events or the night guard's mind breaking under stress. We don't know if Shadow Freddy is helping the children or serving some other purpose. These unknowns are intentional. Scott Cawthon has said that he likes to leave things ambiguous to let the community theorise and debate. The Easter eggs give us enough information to form theories, but not enough to prove them definitively. This keeps the community engaged, keeps people talking about the games years after their release, keeps the mystery alive. Yeah, the Easter eggs also serve a practical purpose in the games themselves. They add replayability, giving players a reason to keep playing even after they've beaten the main game. They add atmosphere, creating moments of unexpected horror that keep players on edge. They reward curiosity, encouraging players to explore every camera, click every poster, listen for every sound. But more than that, they create a sense that there's more to these games than what's immediately visible. They suggest depth, complexity, a world that exists beyond what we can see on screen. When a poster changes to show a crying child, when "It's me" appears on Foxy's sign, when Golden Freddy materializes in your office, it feels like the game is breaking its own rules, like reality is glitching, like something from another world is pushing through into ours. This is the genius of FNAF's Easter eggs. They're not just hidden content, they're windows into a larger reality, glimpses of the truth behind the horror. They show us that the animatronics aren't just malfunctioning robots, but possessed machines inhabited by murdered children. They show us that the restaurant isn't just a failed business, but a crime scene, a place where terrible things happened and were covered up. They show us that the story isn't just about surviving 5 nights, but about understanding what happened, why it happened, and what it means. The Easter eggs in these 3 games laid the foundation for everything that came after. They established the lore, introduced the key characters and events, created the mystery that would drive the franchise forward. Without these Easter eggs, FNAF would just be a simple horror game about animatronics that attack you at night. But with them, it becomes something more. A puzzle, a mystery, a story that demands to be solved. And that's what makes these Easter eggs so important to understanding FNAF. They're not optional content that you can ignore. They're essential to the story, to the lore, to understanding what's really happening in these games. You can play through all 5 nights, survive until 6 AM, and beat the game without ever seeing most of these Easter eggs. But if you do that, you'll miss the real story. The tragedy beneath the horror. The human cost of Fazbear Entertainment's negligence. The Easter eggs force us to engage with the games on a deeper level. They reward players who are willing to look closer, to click on things, to explore every camera, to die repeatedly just to see the minigames. They create a community of theorists and lore hunters, people who spend hours analysing every detail, every frame, every sound, trying to piece together the complete picture. This community aspect is crucial to FNAF's success. The games aren't just played, they're studied, dissected, debated. Every Easter egg becomes evidence in a larger argument about what really happened, who the characters are, when events took place. The community has created timelines, family trees, detailed analyses of every minigame and newspaper and rare screen. And Scott Cawthon has encouraged this, adding more complexity with each game, introducing new mysteries, sometimes confirming theories and sometimes contradicting them. The Easter eggs are his way of communicating with the community, of giving them the pieces they need to solve the puzzle while still maintaining the mystery, the ambiguity, the sense that there's always more to discover. The honking nose that appears in every game is a perfect example of this. It's a simple Easter egg, easy to find, almost silly in its execution. But it's also a message from Scott to the players. Look closer, interact with the environment, don't just accept what's on the surface. If you're willing to click on a poster just to see what happens, you might discover the much darker secrets hidden throughout the game. The rare screens with their 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 chances are the opposite. They're secrets that most players will never see, that require either incredible luck or dedicated hunting. But they're there, waiting to be found, is rewarding the players who are willing to put in the time and effort to see everything the game has to offer. The minigames occupy a middle ground. They're not as rare as the rarest Easter eggs, but they're not guaranteed either. You have to die to see them, and even then you only have a 10% chance of getting one. This creates a strange incentive structure, where dying becomes desirable, where failure is rewarded with lore, where the game over screen is just the beginning of a deeper experience. This is part of what makes a FNAF's approach to storytelling so unique. The story isn't told through cutscenes or dialogue or exposition. It's told through Easter eggs, through minigames, through newspapers and phone calls and rare screens. You have to work for it, have to search for it. Diki have to piece it together from fragments scattered across multiple games, and even then, you might not get the complete picture. The Easter eggs give us pieces, but they don't always tell us how those pieces fit together. We know 5 children were murdered. We know they possessed the animatronics. We know William Afton was the killer. But the details, when exactly did this happen? Which restaurant? Which animatronics? How did the possession work? These are still debated, still uncertain, still open to interpretation. This uncertainty is frustrating for some players, but it's also what keeps the community engaged. If Scott had explained everything clearly, if he had given us a definitive timeline and confirmed every theory, the mystery would be solved. There would be nothing left to discuss, nothing left to discover. Yeah, but by keeping things ambiguous, by giving us clues without answers, he's created a mystery that can sustain years of discussion and debate. The Easter eggs also serve a thematic purpose. They reinforce the idea that the truth is hidden, that Fazbear Entertainment has covered up what happened, that the real story is buried beneath layers of corporate PR and legal manoeuvring. Just as the company tried to hide the murders, tried to keep the restaurant open despite blood leaking from the animatronics, the games hide the truth behind Easter eggs and rare screens and mini-games that most players will never see. To find the truth, you have to dig, have to search, have to be willing to look beyond the surface. You have to click on posters, watch for rare screens, die repeatedly to see the mini-games. You have to be a detective, an investigator, someone who refuses to accept the official story and demands to know what really happened. This mirrors the experience of the characters in the games. Mike Schmidt, Jeremy Fitzgerald, the unnamed FNAF 3 guard. They're all working at these locations without knowing the full truth. They're told the animatronics are just malfunctioning, that the restaurant is safe, that there's nothing to worry about. But as they work through the nights, as they experience the horror firsthand, they begin to realise that something terrible happened here, that the official story is a lie, that the truth is much darker than anyone wants to admit. The Easter eggs are how we, as players, experience that same journey of discovery. We start with the surface story. Survive 5 nights. Don't let the animatronics catch you. But as we play, as we find the Easter eggs, as we see the rare screens and mini-games, we begin to understand the deeper truth. These aren't just malfunctioning robots. They're possessed by murdered children. This isn't just a failed restaurant. It's a crime scene. This isn't just a horror game, it's a tragedy. The crying child drawings that replace the animatronic posters are particularly powerful in this regard. They show us the connection between the characters and the victims, between the mascots and the children who died. When we see Freddy, Bonnie and Chica on their posters, we're seeing the corporate image, the sanitized version that Fazbear Entertainment wants us to see. But when those posters change to show crying children, we're seeing the truth. These characters are prisons, tombs, monuments to children who died horrible deaths. And the "It's me" messages work the same way. On the surface, they're just creepy text that appears during hallucinations. But when you understand the context, when you know that these are the spirits of murdered children trying to communicate, the messages become heartbreaking. They're not trying to scare you. They're trying to be seen, to be recognized, to be remembered. They're saying, "I'm still here. I still exist. Please don't forget about me." Even Golden Freddy's game-crashing jump scare takes on new meaning when you understand the lore. He's not just killing you. He's showing you that he's different, that he operates on a different level, that his power extends beyond the normal rules. Whether he's the crying child from FNAF 4 or Cassidy from the novels or some combination of both, he's clearly the most powerful of the spirits. The one who can affect reality itself, who can crash the game and break the fourth wall. The newspapers are perhaps the most straightforward Easter eggs in terms of lore, but they're also some of the most important. They give us concrete information, dates, numbers of victims, details about what happened. They show us how Fazbear Entertainment responded to the tragedy, how they tried to minimize it, how they struggled to stay in business despite the bad publicity. They show us a company that cared more about its bottom line than about the children who died on its property. The fact that these newspapers are hidden, that they only appear with a 1% chance, is significant. The truth is there, but it's buried, hidden, easy to miss. Just like in real life, where corporate crimes are often covered up or downplayed, the evidence of what happened at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is hidden behind layers of obfuscation and misdirection. The minigames in FNAF 2 and 3 take this even further. They show us the murders themselves, the moment when children died, the moment when their spirits were bound to the animatronics. But they're presented in a retro, 8-bit style that makes them feel distant, abstract, almost like they're not real. This creates a strange disconnect where we're seeing the most important events in the story, but they're presented in a way that makes them feel less immediate, less visceral than the main game. This might be intentional, a way of making the horror more palatable, of allowing us to engage with these terrible events without being overwhelmed by them. Or it might be showing us that these events are in the past, that they're memories or echoes, that we're seeing them through a filter of time and trauma. The Happiest Day minigame is the culmination of all of this. After seeing the murders, after understanding the tragedy, after learning about the children who died and the spirits who were trapped, we finally get to see them freed. The crying child gets his birthday party, the other children give him cake, and they all move on together. It's a moment of peace, of resolution, of healing. But this ending only happens if you find all the Easter eggs, if you complete all the mini-games, if you do everything right. Otherwise, the spirits remain trapped, the cycle continues, and the tragedy is never resolved. This creates a powerful message about the importance of remembering, of acknowledging what happened, of giving the victims the recognition they deserve. The Easter eggs in these 3 games are more than just hidden content. They're the heart of the story, the key to understanding what FNAF is really about. They show us that beneath the jump scares and the survival horror gameplay, there's a story about children who died, about spirits who were trapped, about a company that covered up its crimes, and about the long-term consequences of those actions. They show us that horror isn't just about being scared. It's about understanding why we're scared, about confronting the terrible things that humans are capable of, about acknowledging the victims and the tragedy. The animatronics are scary because they're possessed by murdered children. The restaurant is scary because terrible things happened there. The story is scary because it's about real horrors, child murder, corporate negligence, cover-ups and lies. The Easter eggs force us to engage with these themes, to think about what happened, to piece together the truth from fragments and clues. They reward curiosity and persistence, but they also demand that we confront uncomfortable truths. They make us work for the story, but they also make that story more meaningful, more impactful, more memorable. And that's why, nearly a decade after the first game's release, people are still talking about these Easter eggs, still debating their meaning, still discovering new connections and interpretations. The Easter eggs aren't just secrets. They're the foundation of one of gaming's most complex and enduring mysteries. Scott Cawthon created something special with these games. He took a simple horror concept, animatronics that attack you at night, and layered it with meaning, with tragedy, with a story that demands to be uncovered. The Easter eggs are how he told that story, how he communicated with players, how he created a mystery that would captivate millions. Every honking nose, every rare screen, every changing poster, every mini-game, they're all pieces of a larger puzzle. Some pieces fit together easily, others are still being debated. But together, they create a picture of one of gaming's most elaborate and tragic stories. The children who died at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza deserved better. They deserved to be protected, to be safe, to grow up and live their lives. Instead, they were murdered, their bodies hidden, their deaths covered up. But through the Easter eggs, through the mini-games and rare screens and hidden messages, their story is told, they're remembered, they're recognised, they're given the acknowledgement that they were denied in life. And perhaps that's the most important function of these Easter eggs. They ensure that the victims aren't forgotten, that their story is preserved, that anyone willing to look will find the truth. They transform a horror game into a memorial, a puzzle into a testament, a mystery into a tragedy that demands to be remembered. So the next time you play Five Nights at Freddy's, take a moment to click on that nose, watch for the rare screens, die a few times to see the mini-games, look for the Easter eggs, not just because they're interesting or because they add to the lore, but because they're how the story is told, how the truth is revealed, and how the victims are remembered. These Easter eggs are more than just hidden content. They're the voice of children who can no longer speak, the evidence of crimes that were covered up, the truth that Fazbear Entertainment tried to bury. They're the reason FNAF became more than just a horror game, more than just a viral sensation, more than just a franchise. They're the heart of the story, and they're waiting for anyone willing to look. Let's delve deeper into some of the most significant Easter eggs and what they reveal about the broader FNAF universe. The interconnected nature of these secrets shows us that Scott Cawthon was planning a much larger story from the very beginning, even if he didn't know exactly where it would lead. The Golden Freddy phenomenon is perhaps the most complex Easter egg across all three games. In FNAF 1, he appears as a slumped, seemingly boneless suit that crashes your game. In FNAF 2, he appears in the same pose but with more detail, and we learn he's connected to the "It's Me" hallucinations. By FNAF 3, he's absent entirely, but the minigames suggest his spirit may have been freed in the Happiest Day ending. This progression tells us something important about Golden Freddy's nature. He's not like the other animatronics. He doesn't walk through the building, doesn't appear on cameras moving from room to room, doesn't follow the same rules. He simply appears, fully formed, in your office. This suggests he's more spirit than machine, more hallucination than physical entity. But if Golden Freddy is just a hallucination, why does he appear in FNAF 2's parts and service room as a physical suit? And why do the minigames show him as one of the possessed animatronics? The answer might be that Golden Freddy exists in both states simultaneously. He's a real suit that was used in the past, but he's also a spiritual manifestation, a ghost that can appear without needing the physical suit to be present. This dual nature makes Golden Freddy unique among the animatronics. The others are bound to their physical forms, trapped in the metal shells that contain their bodies. But Golden Freddy, whether because of the nature of his death or because of the strength of the spirit possessing him, has transcended that limitation. He can appear anywhere, any time, without needing to physically travel there. The "It's Me" messages take on additional layers of meaning when we consider who might be speaking. If it's the crying child from FNAF 4, then "It's me" could be him trying to tell his brother that he's still there, still conscious, still suffering. The brother, who we believe becomes Michael Afton, would be working as a security guard at these locations, and the crying child would be trying to reach him, to make him understand what happened. But "it's me" could also be a more general message from all the spirits. They're trying to tell anyone who will listen that they're still there, that they're not just machines, that there are children trapped inside these suits. It's a plea for recognition, for acknowledgement, for someone to finally understand what happened to them and help them find peace. The fact that "it's me" appears on Foxy's sign is particularly interesting. Foxy is believed to be possessed by Fritz, one of the missing children incident victims. Yeah, but the message appearing on his sign suggests it might not be Fritz speaking, but rather Golden Freddy using whatever means available to communicate. The sign changes and changes back, reality glitching, as if the boundary between the physical and spiritual world is thin in this place, allowing messages to bleed through. The poster changes throughout the games follow a similar pattern. They're not just random scares, they're showing us something about the nature of the haunting. When the "Let's Party" poster changes to show Freddy with his head split open, we're seeing behind the mask, seeing the damage, seeing the truth beneath the cheerful exterior. When it changes to show Golden Freddy's face, we're seeing the connection between these characters, the shared history, the fact that they're all part of the same tragedy. The crying child drawings that replace the animatronic posters are even more direct. They're showing us that the animatronics and the children are one and the same, that you can't separate the character from the victim. Every time you see Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, or Foxy, you're seeing a child who died, a spirit who's trapped, a victim who deserves to be remembered. The shadow animatronics, Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy, represent something different from the main possessed characters. They're not children who are murdered and stuffed into suits. They're something else, something formed from the trauma and agony of what happened at these locations. The concept of agony creatures comes from the Fazbear Frights books, where we learn that intense negative emotions can create consciousness, can give form to darkness, can birth entities that feed on fear and suffering. Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy fit this description perfectly. They appear as dark silhouettes of existing characters. They have the power to crash the game or affect reality, and they seem to exist outside the normal rules that govern the other animatronics. If Shadow Bonnie was formed during the missing children incident, created from the terror and pain of William Afton's victims, it would explain why he appears as a spring Bonnie silhouette. He's the shadow cast by that terrible act, the darkness that William left behind when he used the spring Bonnie suit to lure children to their deaths. He's not one of the victims. He's the echo of their suffering given form and consciousness. Shadow Freddy's role in the Follow Me minigame supports this interpretation. See, he leads the animatronics to William, guides them to their destruction, facilitates the events that will lead to William's death in the spring lock suit. Is he helping the children, or is he serving some other purpose? Is he even aware of what he's doing, or is he just following patterns, moving through the building like a ghost replaying the same actions over and over? The fact that Shadow Freddy appears in both FNAF 2 and FNAF 3, looking different in each game, suggests he's changed over time. In FNAF 2, he's dark purple with glowing eyes and teeth. In FNAF 3, he's ash grey and faded. Has he weakened? Has the passage of time drained him of power? Or is this showing us that he was never really there, that he's always been more hallucination than entity, more memory than ghost? The puppet's Easter eggs reveal something important about Charlotte Emily's possession. The transparent images that flash when you shine your flashlight at the puppet show that she exists partially in another realm, that her spirit isn't fully bound to the physical suit the way the other children's spirits are. This makes sense given how she was possessed. She died outside the restaurant, and her spirit merged with the puppet without her body being stuffed into it. This different method of possession might explain why the puppet is more aware than the other animatronics, why she seems to have a purpose beyond simple revenge, why she's the one who gives the other children life by binding their spirits to the animatronics. Charlotte retained more of her humanity, more of her consciousness, and because her possession wasn't based on her flesh being trapped in the suit, she's more ghost than the others, more spirit than machine. The mini-games across FNAF 2 and 3 create a timeline of tragedy. Take Cake to the Children shows us Charlotte's death, the first victim, the moment that started everything. Foxy Go 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 shows us the missing children incident at the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. 5 children lured away and murdered. Give Gifts, Give Life shows us the puppet binding the children's spirits to the animatronics, giving them a new form, transforming them from victims into something else. Save Them shows us that the killing didn't stop, that there were more victims, that William Afton continued his murder spree even after the first incident. The fact that we can't save them, that the minigame ends with "you can't" on the screen, reinforces the tragedy. These children are already dead. Their fate is sealed. We're seeing the past, and the past can't be changed. Follow Me shows us the end, or what should have been the end. William returns to destroy the animatronics, perhaps to harvest their remnant, perhaps to eliminate evidence, perhaps simply because he can. But the spirits are released, and they corner him, and he dies in the spring Bonnie suit. It's justice, of a sort, though it comes too late to save the children, too late to undo the damage. Happiest Day is the resolution we've been working toward. The crying child, most likely the Bite of 83 victim, the child whose death may have triggered William's descent into madness, finally gets his birthday party. The other children, wearing masks of the animatronics they possessed, give him cake and celebrate with him, and then they all move on together, finally free, finally at peace. This ending only happens if you complete all the secret minigames, if you find all the Easter eggs, if you do everything right. It's a message about the importance of remembering, of acknowledging what happened, of giving the victims the recognition they deserve. The children can only find peace if their story is told, if someone takes the time to uncover the truth, if they're not forgotten. The newspapers across both games provide the factual backbone of the story. They give us dates, numbers, concrete details about what happened. June 26th, 5 children. A man in a mascot suit, bodies never found. These aren't vague hints or ambiguous clues. They're facts, evidence. The kind of information that would appear as a real investigation. But the newspapers also show us how the truth was buried. The articles are brief, clinical, minimizing the horror of what happened. The company's responses are tone deaf, more concerned with public relations than with the victims. The final newspaper announces the closure with a message about how the characters will live on in the hearts of children. A statement that's darkly ironic given that the characters literally live on because they're possessed by dead children. The fact that these newspapers are hidden, that they only appear with a 1% chance, mirrors how the truth was hidden in the story. Fazbear Entertainment didn't want people to know what happened. They tried to cover it up, to minimise it, to keep the restaurant open despite the evidence of murder. The newspapers being Easter eggs reflects this. The truth is there, but it's buried, hidden, easy to miss if you're not looking for it. The rare screens with animatronics staring at the camera with hollow eyes serve multiple purposes. They're scary, creating moments of unexpected horror that keep players on edge. But they're also revealing something about the nature of the possession. When we see those eyes, we're seeing the spirits looking out, we're seeing the consciousness trapped inside the machines. The fact that these screens can appear at any time, even on the title screen or after death, suggests that the haunting extends beyond the game itself. It's as if the spirits are aware that they're in a game, that they're being watched by players, and they're trying to communicate across that boundary. When Bonnie's face appears on the title screen with those hollow eyes, it's not just a scare, it's Bonnie looking at you, the player, acknowledging your presence, trying to make you understand. This metatextual element is part of what makes FNAF's Easter eggs so effective. They don't just tell a story within the game, they create a relationship between the game and the player, between the spirits and the person experiencing their story. When Golden Freddy crashes your game, he's not just killing your character, he's affecting your computer, your reality, breaking through the boundary between fiction and reality. The audio Easter eggs, Foxy's humming, the circus music, the knocking sounds, add another layer to the atmosphere. They're sounds that shouldn't be there, that don't have an obvious source, that create a sense of unease and wrongness. Something is making these sounds, but what? Is it the animatronics? Is it the building itself? Is it the spirits trying to communicate? The ambiguity is intentional. Scott Cawthon could have made these sounds clearly attributable to specific sources, but he chose not to. He wanted them to be mysterious, to be open to interpretation, to add to the sense that this place is wrong, that reality doesn't work the way it should here, that the boundary between the physical and spiritual world has been eroded by trauma and death. The progression of Easter eggs across the three games shows Scott's growing confidence in his storytelling. FNA, F1's Easter eggs are relatively simple. Rare screens, changing posters, Golden Freddy's appearance. FNA F2 adds the mini-games, but introducing a new way of telling the story, showing us the past through 8-bit recreations of terrible events. FNA F3 expands on this, making the mini-games more complex, more interconnected, requiring players to solve puzzles and find hidden methods to access them. This progression mirrors the community's growing engagement with the lore. As players became more invested in solving the mystery, Scott gave them more complex puzzles to solve, more intricate connections to discover, more layers to peel back. The Easter eggs evolved from simple scares to elaborate storytelling devices, from random occurrences to carefully planned revelations. The Easter eggs in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2 and 3 are more than just hidden content. They're the foundation of one of gaming's most elaborate and enduring mysteries. They transformed a simple horror game into a complex narrative about tragedy, possession, corporate negligence, and the long-term consequences of violence against children. Every honking nose, every rare screen, every changing poster, every mini-game contributes to this larger story. They show us that Scott Cawthon was building something intricate from the very beginning, that every detail was chosen carefully, that the mystery was designed to reward players who were willing to look deeper, to search harder, to piece together the truth from fragments and clues. These Easter eggs created a community of theorists and lore hunters, People who spend hours analysing every frame, every sound, every detail. They sparked debates that continue to this day about timelines, identities, motivations and meanings. Thus, they turned FNAF from a viral horror game into a cultural phenomenon, a puzzle that millions of people have tried to solve. But most importantly, these Easter eggs ensure that the victims are remembered. The children who died at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, whose murders were covered up, whose bodies were hidden, their story is preserved in these games, waiting for anyone willing to look. The Easter eggs, their voice, their testimony, their memorial. So the next time you play Five Nights at Freddy's, remember that you're not just playing a horror game, you're uncovering a tragedy, piecing together a mystery, giving voice to victims who can no longer speak for themselves. The Easter eggs are waiting, the truth is hidden, and the children are still there, still watching, lies still hoping that someone will finally understand what happened to them. The strange man knows you, he has always known you, and he is waiting. Wait, wrong script. But you get the idea. The animatronics know you, they remember you, and they're waiting for someone to finally tell their story, to uncover the truth, to give them the peace they've been denied for so long. That's what these Easter eggs are really about. Not just scares, not just secrets, but remembrance, justice, truth, and that's why they matter.